We have a email, calendar, and contacts API that allows you to connect directly to a mailbox, to a person's account, build a scheduling software, build emailing software, and then we also have parsing, AI parsing on top of that actually pulls out from the inbox either something as simple as just a clean conversation without the signature blocks and everything else, or something as interesting as the content of the sentiment, or like give me every line item of everything I bought from Amazon, give me every tracking number, give me every flight I have, like really whatever structured data you want to pull out of that unstructured content, we help you accomplish with a simple, easy to build API.
Welcome to our podcast from the ground up, where we interview startup founders exploring their journeys, their successes, challenges, and lessons learned. We hope you'll be inspired in discovering what it takes to build a thriving startup. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, and here with us today we have Gleb Polyakov, the founder of Nihilist, a venture-backed startup that's raised $175 million in funding. Gleb, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Jake. Really happy to be here.
Great. So as the co-founder and CEO of Nihilist, Gleb is focused on empowering developers and their organizations to think big, innovate, and build a better future through unlocking the true power of their communications data. With an emphasis on accelerating corporate growth and nurturing company culture, Gleb has been recognized by some as one of the top 50 CEOs in North America. Impressive, Gleb. Love what you guys are creating, and we'll dive in here. Before we do, tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to have the conversation on the podcast. But I guess I've just always been a geek. I've always been super interested in the PBS science shows, the Discovery Channel shows, the Bill Nye's the Science Guys. And it took me down a path of technology and physics and science being just what fascinated me. For me, I just sort of love anything that's really big in scope and scale, like really tops down, but like complicated, that you have to be like clever to figure out. You have to like run the right experiments. And like for me, physics is what I studied in school, so like that fits in that bucket, but linguistics, economics, business for sure. Any field that's like, okay, there's so many different dimensions involved. There's so many different variables. But there is some sort of like consistent base level reality that if you find the right lever and you pull those right levers, you can get a predictable outcome. Figuring out what those levers are, getting that outcome, I just find super cool. And technology is one of the best ways to get into that space.
Well, we'll get into Nihilist and what you're solving there. But talk to us a little bit about companies prior to this. I know that you are not a first-time founder. You went out, you've built companies, acquired companies, sold companies. How many companies have you built so far?
So Nihilist is my second VC-funded company. Before that, I had several other businesses, small businesses in Atlanta. I had a deli out in Marietta, an import store. I've had like a computer repair shop, and I've done a couple of consulting and contracting services. But yeah, Nihilist far and away is the largest, both in terms of headcount and funding and actual reach of product and impact we can have on the world that I've been lucky to run so far. And it's been a journey. Definitely in my first few businesses, I made all the first time founder mistakes. So it's if you're out there, if you're a first time founder, don't feel bad that you've got stuff to learn. It is a process.
We see this a lot and we hear this a lot. As an entrepreneur, what's the main driver for you that you really get out of being your own boss, of leading? What is it that really inspired you to even try and build your own future?
It's a good question, man. The best version of an answer to that I've heard is like an entrepreneur, somebody who will work 12 hours a day to avoid working 8 hours a day. I think there's like a little bit of insanity out there if you're gonna go out and try to start your own company and like do that kind of work. For me personally, it's tied into, I just need that sense of agency. I don't actually thrive working for someone else because I want to like be involved. I want to make an impact at a scale that I can't as like a lower level IC at like a much larger organization. I just care a lot about opportunities, and I'm also real stubborn about the way I see the world and the things I want to accomplish. And most folks I've met in the founder space are kind of similar, right? There's some combination of like internalized anxiety and ambition and grit combined with a desire for agency and a strong perspective on the type of value either they have internally or the type of value they want to bring to the world.
As a founder of a company myself and having built organizations and hired a lot of people, I always struggled with when I bring people into the company, I want them to be somewhat like me in terms of the drive and the commitment and the passion. But because it's not always their company when they start, they might get equity down the road. But it's always a challenge of finding the same level of grit or the same level of commitment as you build a company like you're building today, which has got hundreds of people. How do you ensure that you get the right people and the right drive behind what you're looking for when you start to build a company?
Yeah, no, I always actually see those as slightly separate questions almost, because I see a lot of founders, a lot of business owners get a little bit frustrated by that part you mentioned. Like, hey, the people I'm hiring on, they're just not as motivated as me. Why aren't they working nights and weekends or whatever? It's like, why would they, man? I kind of feel like it's a bit of an unreasonable expectation to think that somebody who's getting comped at a much lower level than you equity-wise is going to have the same level of buy-in. At the same time, like that's not just you have to hire for grit. You have to hire for perseverance, especially if you're an earlier startup, especially if you were a smaller startup. By which I mean, call it under 200 people, still within that range of like Dunbar's number, where people are wearing hats. There aren't purely specialized roles. You've got to have that grit. You've got to have that perseverance, that work ethic. Part of it is, I think that, especially in like the current macroeconomic climate, people who go into startups kind of self-select into that. Definitely in 2021, 2020, we saw some folks who were just like, well, startups are cool. There's infinite money. And I just want to find the billion-dollar valuation startup that I can go off and like have my startup secret when like they'd only worked at IBM for like 20 years. And like, no offense to IBM, but grit is not the word that I associate with a mid-level manager from IBM. And like the hiring process that you and your team and your company choose has to optimize around the values that you have as a company and the needs you have as a company. For me, like that grit, that perseverance, that desire for agency and ownership is the big thing. So I always say that my job as CEO at the company is to make anyone who works at Nihilus as rich and as famous as they want to be. And the rest is up to you. If you want agency, come to a startup. If you want to be given the direction of like, hey, here's what we need to do, but have the how owned directly by you and entirely by you, and almost in an unsupported way by you. So you have to go and learn and collaborate with other people on the team, figure out your own processes. Then a startup is where you should be. Then you fit in well with the Nihilus culture. But not everyone has that. I think it's making sure that you do look out for it in the hiring process, and that you do like regularly speak to it to make sure that there is that alignment on the type of person you want to be with, or the type of person that you want to be with at work, the type of person you want your company to have, the energy and vibe, the cultural mores that you want to be there. Because if that part gets misaligned, if you get a bunch of folks with different perspectives on any number of work type stuffs, like that causes a lot of friction. That process is also natural, but that's why you got to have a regular conversation, because you gotta bring it all back and align around those cultural values.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I believe that companies, first and foremost, are about people. And I think it's lost sometimes where you hire people and you grow the company and it's about the financials and about what you're building. But at the end of the day, what's your people strategy? What are you doing for the people to nurture them, to optimize them, to grow them, to put them on the right ladder, individual contributor versus leadership? So there's a lot of areas that we see companies succeed well in, and others are learning as they go. You're in rare form where you've built a company that's been upwards of 300 and plus people and had to kind of build it and downsize a little bit. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit later. But what was the inspiration around what you created with Nihilus? Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, I mean the idea behind Nihilus, and for those listening who aren't intimately familiar with every aspect of the Nihilus API platform, we have a email, calendar, and contacts API that allows you to connect directly to a mailbox, to a person's account, build a scheduling software, build emailing software, and then we also have parsing, AI parsing on top of that actually pulls out from the inbox either something as simple as just a clean conversation without the signature blocks and everything else, or something as interesting as the content of the sentiment, or like give me every line item of everything I bought from Amazon, give me every tracking number, give me every flight I have, like really whatever structured data you want to pull out of that unstructured content, we help you accomplish with a simple, easy to build API. The reason that's fun and interesting to me is that, like, okay, there's the software's eating the world, that piece of it. It's a super high leverage place to be. But looking beyond just software, and this is a bit of my physics brain talking, but the most interesting industries to me, the ones that have always changed the world the most, affected people's lives the most, like pretty much for the past 10,000 years, it's been energy, transportation, and communication. The heating our homes, powering what we build, getting goods and services around between different places, and then just talking to each other, collaborating with each other. It's one of the only things that makes humans a unique species. It's how we get things done. The more people work alongside each other, the more we accomplish. The more people are on message, the more we get done. We go to the moon, we win wars, we have revolutions that bring expanded rights to more and more people. That comes from people working together. And so with software eating the world, there needs to be a way to easily work with and access the most common communication channel out there. Email is, to the surprise of many, still growing, and it is the most common communication channel out there. It's something like 10 times more volume than SMS. That's excluding the spam messages, I promise. And it's one that like everybody uses. Like everyone has a calendar. You meet through time. You have to coordinate that. If you want to build software that helps you be productive, you have to let them talk. You have to let them coordinate with each other. So that's sort of the goal with Nihilus. We want to build technology that helps people collaborate together. We want to unlock that potential to work productively for everyone in the world.
So if you're a developer out there and you're working at a software company, you're building a platform and you need to integrate with calendaring or email or other platforms that aren't yours, but you want to build this in, does your technology make it simpler for them and faster to do that integration without having to build it?
Yeah, exactly. So with just a couple lines of code, and if you go and sign up for one of our free sandbox accounts, we've written all the code out for you. You can pick your use case, you can pick your language, and it outputs the code blocks of what you might want to go copy paste and run directly. Obviously, your production environment is going to interact with other parts of your code, but it's a good quick head start. So like during COVID, we helped over 50 million people get COVID vaccinations. Or at least we powered the scheduling for 50 million vaccinations. I'm not sure how many people it is underneath, at most 50 million. The healthcare and telemedicine is a big vertical of ours, both on the communication and on the scheduling side. We work with a lot of e-commerce companies like Klarna that build those user experiences that allow you to have great digital e-commerce type buying and purchasing flows. We work with real estate companies. Something like 60% of all the real estate transactions in North America at this point go through our servers, either on the commercial or residential side. And we do everything from help power CRMs for brokers to run websites, the e-commerce house buying websites, the communication flows there, to the back end on the lending side, help insurance lenders, mortgage underwriters have a source of truth. So you can really drop the time it takes for someone to get a mortgage, the origination time from 20 some days to 7 days or less. If all the communication, instead of having to TP all the financial records, all the everything else between multiple boxes, everyone's emailing them to each other, connect the banker, the home buyer, the real estate agent, the underwriter, all in one tech stack using a Nihilus API, because it's all an email. So just pull it from the mailbox and you have a quicker, better experience. Product-wise, we help primarily on time to market, on ongoing costs, scale, and maintenance, and then on the privacy and security side. Because if you're touching calendaring and email, it's real private.
Great. I'm sure I'm a user at the application level, probably don't know what your technology underneath it.
One of my favorite tricks is when we're pitching like to investors or whatever is they're like, oh, I'm not sure. Will people actually connect their mailboxes though? And then reliably they're like, oh, well, what's your email? And we look them up in the server and then it's like, okay, well, you're connected to like 5 different customers. So you did.
You bring up investors. When you went out to raise capital, you have the idea, was it in market before you started to really go for your Series A? Did you raise a seed round? And in your journey of raising capital, what was that like? How often did you have to pitch before you finally landed in your Series A? And obviously you've raised more capital since then, but what's that journey been like for you?
Great question. The very, very first round we raised was both pre-revenue and pre-product in a way. So the money was raised ahead of the actual end customer tool being available. And I said, but also we pivoted. So we had built the API already. So we proved out the core technology, but we raised money at the very, very beginning on this idea of being a email client, like an end user email client, like a front app or a superhuman, that kind of tool. That ended up not being a great business for a lot of reasons. But the API was already built. The API was open source. It was growing organically. It was getting a lot of traction in the developer community. So by the time that like the original money we had raised for an email client business ran out, we went to pivot to the API company, being like an email API dev tools company. By that point, we had something like 1.5 million in ARR just on the API product. So we were able to go and raise off that traction.
Wow. Every company we talked to has gone through a pivot. Was there a breakthrough or an area within your technology since then that you pivoted again or had to transition into? Or market conditions, for product conditions, anything that comes to mind?
Quite a lot. Oh, and actually, let me answer the second part of your previous question before I move on to that one, which is
Yeah.
for the fundraising process. I would say each round we talk to somewhere between at least 50 to 100 people. Later rounds, the Series C, the Series D, are see fewer people, just because there are fewer funds that do deals in your space at that size. But earlier rounds, definitely quite a lot of folks. My advice there to anyone trying to raise funds would be segment people out into tiers, groups of 5 or 6 people that you'll talk to, funds that you'll go out and talk to. Have a mix. Don't go with the worst funds all up front. Don't go with the best funds all up front. In each tier, in each bucket, mix and match the quality, size of the investment partner you're going to talk to. The reason for that is, one, you don't want to burn through all those layers immediately. And two, the feedback, the messages you're going to get in that fundraising process is going to be different. Your Sequoia Capital is going to give you different feedback and advice. Whether right or wrong, it'll be different. And if you want to target that segment, you'll want to optimize for them. Then some 2-person first fund of a $20 million VC who is just getting in the game, right? It's the concerns, the messaging, you want to adjust your pitch to match the market. So have a process, go through it rigorously, and definitely expect a lot of painful no's and rejection. And then the
Really.
second question you had was around pivots and market adjustments and changes. I kind of think that's constant. People talk about pivoting as a milestone event, but in my mind, like as a business, as an organization, and I think you said it super well, like a business only has 2 stakeholders. It's the employees, because like a company's made up out of people, so it has to serve the interests of the people, and the customers, because if they stop paying you, you stop being a company. You got to play to both of those. So you have to adjust the culture to make sure you're able to attract the best talent. You have to adjust the product to react to the market and attract the customers. For us, the core email API concept has been the same, but over the past 5 years, we've really developed the higher order, like intelligence functionality, what we do, like the structuring unstructured data. That I see more of as an evolution of the core product. It's not something that was there originally, but it's a natural extension of the data set we have access to and the type of use cases that we help our customers achieve. And then there have been, I mentioned the email client one. That is more your classical, this idea didn't work at all, let's try something new. We've had to respond to various sort of ecosystem changes. For example, the Gmail API maybe 3 or 4 years ago had its security policies change. So a lot of customers that wanted to access Google data, because in North America, it's something like 40% market share is on G Suite. If you are like a SMB SaaS business trying to sell to other SMB SaaS businesses, like more likely than not, they're going to be on G Suite. To build into that data store, you had to jump through quite a few security hoops. So we had to go and find a corral of partners externally, third-party auditors, work with Google directly to create a product that allowed us to walk our customers through that, really white glove them through that deeply painful process on the Google side. It became like a nice source of revenue for us as well. At least top line, it was 10% margin. We're not trying to hurt people on the getting started side, but thankfully last year Google went and revised their policies to make that part so much easier for folks. It hurt us a little bit on the top line side because we don't need to renew a contract for a service that people don't need. But on the other hand, it helped us get more logos faster because, well, okay, now overall for the whole ecosystem, it's easier to for folks to integrate and get to the value they want through our product.
As you look at the market today, it's impacted a lot of companies positively, negatively. It's made some more innovative. It's taken other companies really out of the market totally. We've seen companies that have had to downsize multiple times. Transparently, I know you've had to downsize a few times. What are some of the lessons you've learned in that process, and what's been the outcome coming out of that as a company?
Yeah. So for us, we went up to 350 people total after we raised our Series C round of about 120 million. And then we've since then gone down to, we're about just over 150 on the Nala side. So pretty radical change and adjustment. What we learned is like when we grew that headcount, we did super quickly. Like we did it over the course of a year, and we went from 100 to 350. So we more than tripled our headcount in a year. One very painful lesson there is that effectively at the end of the day, what we did is we hired, but we didn't scale. Our processes didn't go with us. So we had always a really strong focus on communication, transparency, writing things down, doing that kind of work in person. Within the company. And a lot of that was done in person too. A lot of the conversations were. Then, COVID hit, we went full remote. During the COVID times, we tried hybridizing since then. And then that's its own continual thing. But we were small enough that we didn't really pay attention to the processes at the level we should have. We were small enough that we didn't pay attention to the culture to the level we should have. Because if it's 50 people in a room, if it's 100 folks, each like really behind the mission and the product and excited about what they're doing, it's not as needed. But then when you triple over the course of a year, the average tenure plummets. People don't know. They haven't been working with each other for the past 2 years. They don't know how work is done or why. They don't understand why a process is there. If you're hiring that many people, you're also bringing in folks that expect a certain level of like operational support or rigor to be there, which is one side of it is really easy to get across. You can say, well, hey, that part's not there. Go and figure out, go fix it, go do it. Those people who are used to that, so good at figuring it out and doing it because they have experience with it. The part that I think was a painful lesson for us was a lot of times there's an assumption that something's not there for a reason. A lot of times there's an assumption that like, oh, if someone's not doing something, it's because somebody said, don't do that. Where for a startup, often it's the more universal answer is, oh, well, shit, we should be doing that. And nobody has until now. So let's figure out whether that's a priority now or next month or at all. And then if it is, let's do it. So yeah, for us, it's the scaling side, I think, of the culture and the process that was the very critical need for us to do. And then when the capital markets changed, when a lot of the, okay, let's just hire up 50 salespeople because on a quota basis, this number we want to hit and we need this capacity to support it, a little bit of overassign. When those assumptions didn't pan out and like the capital conditions, as we all know, the SVB collapse, the interest rates changed, the continual macro, on and on and on. We just had to adjust to make sure that we as a company were focused carefully on our goals, on our product, on our end customers, and on getting it through and out the other side of any downturn as the market leader. Anyway, there's a lot more to that topic. Where can I jump in to clarify?
Yeah. What would you have done differently now, aside from scaling up maybe too fast? What would you have done differently now that you've kind of been through it looking back?
I mean, a universe of things. Do you mean like during the reorg in particular?
Maybe on the scale up and on the as well.
Yeah. On the scale up side, for the go-to-market piece, I would say that only hiring salespeople when the opportunity flow really demands it. Like really pushing folks to work more opportunities than they want to, and then hiring up, as opposed to saying, all right, well, we need to hire now because we're going to get a bunch of opportunities in the future, and people will just know how to work them. Because it led to us seeing a drop of attainment rates across our sales team from the like really healthy numbers we were at to something like 50%. I think at the worst, it got to like 45% attainment across the sales team. And to be clear, this is not me saying those salespeople were at fault. They weren't set up for success by the company. But sales is very much a team sport. So as those attainment rate drops, as the morale drops, it gets harder and harder to feel motivated to go out and hit your number and feel like you're on a winning team. So on the go-to-market side, that would be my lesson one for scaling is focus on having enough opportunities, generating those opportunities, and then hiring into the sales functions to go out after them. The second one is like literally just the values, the culture piece. How do we want things to work? What is the process for getting this done? How do we focus on our goals to make sure we're not running in too many directions, to make sure that teams have the clarity and permission to say no to things because they're prioritizing what's more important. And I know that's a bit high level, and everyone has different frameworks and OKRs and V2 moms for how to get there, but find some way that that works for you, because that structure can only come from the leadership team. It can only come from a founding team, and it's what will set the team up for success. That's what I really wish we had spent a lot more time on, that type of company and leadership alignment piece. And then the second part for learnings for a reorg is make sure that there's clarity, especially when it happens. I had a lot of lessons that I think we were lucky enough to be in a spot where we were well enough capitalized to make sure that everyone had a good exit package. I'm very, very proud of within 6 months, 90% of all the folks that we laid off, they had found fantastic roles other places. Engage your alumni network to make sure that you're supporting the people who you brought on and that had to lose their jobs because of poor choices made by leadership. Like that is, I think, morally pretty critical. And then from a messaging perspective, be honest, be direct. Everyone's adults. No one needs sugarcoating. I think the first one, what we did poorly was we spent a bit too long feeling the pain of the reorg and feeling like it is a pain and a trauma. And it certainly is, but on the leadership level, if you let yourself spend so long there, that then resonates to the rest of the team. That then creates a space where that anxiety can grow. And so when we had to reorg a second time, we focused much more on, well, here specifically is a new org chart. Here's the goals for each department on the medium and short term. Here's what specifically you on this team we want to get done over the next week and 2 weeks and month. To make sure that we are we're changing the reason behind having to reorg, that we're actually making impact. And that like level on execution and results drives the focus and I think camaraderie that allowed us to really turn things around, get back on track and continue the growth path.
From a morale perspective, as the leader in those times where you're going downsizing and continuing to right-side the business, what tools or what things did you use that kind of keep your own morale up in the tough times?
For me personally, I wish I could say going to the gym every day. Unfortunately, I wasn't talking to people, talking to the folks at the company. The folks ICs know exactly what the core issues are. It's the old joke of like all a consultant does when they're hired in is they go and talk to the lower level teams. They'll tell them exactly what's wrong, and then they go report that back to upper management. But talk to folks at the company, understand what the issues are, understand how folks are feeling, and get support from people more experienced from you. Have advisors, have mentors in your professional life, personal life. Again, for us, we're deeply grateful for the support we got from our board, from the advisors we have. We have folks, everyone from John Chambers and Tony Fidel to folks like Alex Moore on our board supporting us. And the perspectives and like different boom and bust cycles that those folks have been through and clarity they can drive on purpose and direction, for me personally, was really helpful to hear. Because I was freaking out. I was feeling like just I did a bad job, that I was scared for myself, the team, the work we put in, and trying to figure out like, okay, well, now my job is to lead through that on the emotional side for the team, lead through that on the business side to make sure we actually accomplish goals, and not getting caught in the past, not getting caught in a place of analysis, and instead of going towards action and looking forward into the future. At the end of the day, I think was what was best for the morale. And then doing that as a team, actually talking and having conversations with people about these things, everyone on the team about these things. Because again, people are adults, and if you treat them like adults, they'll respond as adults. That was what allowed our morale to recover pretty quickly.
As you look at the market today as a company, and it sounds like you're in a healthy position now where a lot of companies had to make tough decisions, you kind of come out of it in a different position. What's the biggest challenge you're looking to solve for today? For some it's revenue, for others it's making their people better. for your company? What is it that you're looking at solving now?
Yeah, I think I have no idea what the capital markets will look like over the next couple of years. So it's been a focus on how can we build the strongest business possible under the perhaps incorrect assumption that the better the business on like core fundamentals is, the more easily you have access to capital. So it's like I'm looking at top line ARR growth. I'm looking at like year over year acceleration. We're looking at the expansion rate and retention rates for our customers. We're looking at gross margin. Those are really like the core KPI. Oh, and the number of new logos, like the logo velocity of who you're able to bring in. And those are the top level KPIs really focus on. And then behind each of them, we have like leading indicators. So logo velocity, that goes down and becomes pipeline velocity. That becomes lead velocity. And so each one of those has it's not always a direct funnel, but each of them has leading indicators they can go and track to make sure that you're getting back on a direction you're going to be happy with. So for me, the challenge that we're facing now is trying to figure out, okay, I can easily say what the right goal is for the company. It's like, cool, let's double year over year and figure out how make that happen. Picking the right leading indicators, especially in a place where like, okay, I don't know what Gen AI tools will look like a year from now, 5 years from now. I'm not sure when the chips will come onto the market that will allow like a real explosion. I'm not sure when, Starlink and its competitors will allow like the other half of the world, the other 4 billion, to get online, or what the impact of that will be. But I have hypotheses. So how can we predict the future? How can we figure out what's going to happen from now and make sure we're steering the ship in the right direction? That's the biggest challenge I think of any leader, and for us in the technology space. Well, maybe I shouldn't say technology. For us in the startup space, the interplay between that and when either VC funding at later stages sort of comes back, and like hopefully it doesn't come back to 2020 levels. Hopefully it comes back to 2018 levels. When that marketplace, those like narrative structures return, or whether other avenues for making sure that your business can sustain comes back is always interesting. For us, we're in a place where we have the runway we need because of our last raise to get to a place of profitability. Great. And the tough part I saw, though, for a lot of businesses is they, by no fault of their own, honestly, just got caught by the macro, right? They had a plan. They were executing against the plan. They did a good job, but they only had 4 months of runway when the downturn happened. And the numbers didn't matter, right? They had to go out and go into an M&A transaction process. Trying to stay ahead of that next turn and trying to make sure that your business is healthy enough across all the metrics to either weather a storm or give you maximum optionality. I think that's the biggest challenge of any leader right now.
Well said. There's a lot of companies we're talking to that are in the same situation you're in, and some are, much in different positions, maybe not as favorable as you are. There's companies that have a different path for growth. Some are through acquisition. I know you've been through an acquisition at your current company. What was that like, and what was the result?
Yeah, so we acquired a company called June.ai. Oh, I'm going to get the date wrong. Something like four years ago. They were a tool that actually had built on top of our core APIs as a big part of their product, but they had been doing just insanely cool ML and NLP work on top of the MLS data store. And they struggled a bit to get the right go-to-market and distribution motion for what they were doing, but the tech was insanely awesome. And they were familiar with our company, our tech stack, our product, because they were using it to build theirs. So it felt like a very, very natural place for us to come in and join forces. The team was, I want to say, 5 or 6 people in size at the time. We've retained all but one of them still today. The CTO is the VP of engineering here at Nihilus and leads a lot of our AI work, which is something like 20% of our revenue right now comes from that like AI ML parsing type product line. And that's pretty quickly growing. So a very interesting experience. I think we kind of got lucky. It was a bit of a perfect storm because we've been down that M&A road with maybe 10 other companies, and something always came up as a bit of a blocker. either like the integration story wouldn't have worked out because there were the personalities involved, the locations, the technology just wasn't conducive to us like making a successful marriage, or there were what's the right way to say this? We couldn't get to a meeting of the minds on the structure of the agreements. Or for one of them, it was just like the under due diligence, all their claims just didn't pan out. So yeah, for me, M&A is like when it's opportunistic and it's a perfect storm, great, it makes sense, it's going to work really well. When it's a strategy of growing through M&A, like inorganic growth, that requires a very special skill set. We haven't really done that much at Nihilus. We've been more on the opportunistic side. But in a previous life, I was on the PE side where it was a little bit more of the, okay, how can we go out and actually find these opportunities for inorganic growth? It's a full-time job. It requires a lot of deal sourcing. It requires a lot of relationship building with founders, requires a ton of understanding of the space you're in, or the space you're trying to get into, and I want to say cultural, but I guess I mean like what the shape of the sales motions in that industry or vertical or category are. Because I found that that's where, if you're trying to like acquire a company that's like purely enterprise sales to like a incumbent industry that is used to a little bit more of a relational sales motion, but your company is like a PLG self-service growth, you're not going to be able to understand the trade-offs made intuitively on the sales funnel, and you would have to put in a perhaps irrationally high level of trust in the org you're bringing on to make that successful. And oftentimes I see companies that acquire smaller companies not give the smaller companies that credit because they're like, well, we're acquiring you, so we know best. And that's where.
Yeah, I understand that. We've been through that process ourselves. As you look going forward, what's on the roadmap for Nihilus? What's coming?
On the roadmap, exciting. So we have coming up in a couple of months a whole new version of our API. My co-founder and CTO, Christine Spang, she said it best, like, finally, I have a product I can be proud of. We strive to have a product you're proud of, but like anyone who's built a company before knows there's always that like voice that's like, if we only had this, then we'd be a real company, even if you have 1,000 plus employees. Or like, I just wish I could fix like these two things about the customer experience or the way that developers have to use this. And so we have something coming out in 2 months, 3 months time that will really just help all of our customers have a much more reliable experience for existing customers, a faster product, but more importantly for me, a much better developer experience. For anyone new coming on, it'll be so much easier to get to your intended use case, to build it and deploy it, to build the authentication flow, to build like the token management stuff, to like listen to incoming events and do the filtering and only have to process and spend time on in your code or in your computing on what actually matters to you. I don't know, that customer value piece I'm pretty stoked about. And then long term, like the AI stuff for a company like Nihilus is just deeply exciting. Because again, what we do in large part is we give access and the ability to work with these super important data stores of natural language, email and scheduling flows, and the attachments and the things that people are trying to accomplish with them. There's just like a wealth of opportunity. So like we have a lot of companies that use us to build their sales outreach tools. So these are the sales lofts, the active campaigns, the outreaches, and the Gong type tools, because we give them access to that data. The LLM side allows us to, instead of like, hey, go and build sales tools, like go and build a Grammarly, go and build a generative function on top of the exact same use cases and expand the functionality you already have without having to have the expertise on like the deep LLM ops, without having to have the expertise on the like fine tuning that you would otherwise have to learn from scratch. And a lot of vertical specific or use case specific end user companies don't have that deep talent, that tech bench to go and do that on their own.
That sounds amazing. I know AI is everywhere right now, and you have been there for some time, and it looks like there's a huge opportunity ahead of you. If companies wanted to find out about Nihilus, where would they go? If they wanted to connect with you, how would they find you?
Yeah, go to nihilus.com and sign up for a free account. It's a free developer sandbox. Build something cool. If you want to get in contact with me, build something cool. I'll definitely look at it. Yeah, contact me on LinkedIn. I'm also gleb@nihilus.com if you want to shoot me an email. Though I will say that the other side of the rise of LLMs is that, man, my inbox has been slammed in the past month or past couple of months with just a flood of terrible cold outreach, much of which I can see is just programmatically AI generated. So if I don't email you back right away, give me some grace.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Gleb, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time, and to all our listeners that are out there listening, appreciate you spending your time with us today as well. Really excited to see, Gleb, how things go for you in the future and the growth of Nihilus. And for all those that are looking forward to hearing more insightful episodes like this, make sure to join us in the next week following. Nihilus, until then, or Nihilus and Gleb, I'm going to talk to both of you here. Appreciate your time here, and we'll keep plugging away. Catch up with you online. Take it easy. Before we wrap up, I want to give a big shout out to all the entrepreneurs that have joined to make this podcast possible, and for all the listeners for listening. It means the world to me that you chose to spend your time with us today. I'm your host, Jake Aaron Villarreal, signing off for now, but can't wait to connect with you all soon on the next episode. Take care. This show is sponsored by Match Relevant, a company that helps venture-backed startups find the best people in the market, and they do it in 3 simple steps. First, they sit down with founders to understand their story. Second, they tell their story into multiple candidate channels. And third, they schedule interviews within 48 hours. Find us at matchrelevant.com to learn more about how we do it.